Here we are again, ready to use our tools, the editor and the terminal that you see on your screen, in order to write one more program and learn even more about Java. What is our objective this time? We will ask the user for some input. We will specifically ask for a real number, which we are going to use as the radius for a wheel object. And then with this particular radius, for that particular wheel, we want to compute the circumference and the area. So that's our goal for today. We would also like to go and print those two numbers that we will compute back to the user. So here is our class, the wheel class. Remember, the file that we save it needs to have exactly the same name as the class, so we are saving it into a wheel.java class. And since I said that we want to have a program, it means that we need to include a main method. Let's go and write it down as we have learned. Public static void main string square brackets args. Great. Now, as I mentioned before, all of these names are for the moment unknown to you. We will explore them as we go through the course. It's practically impossible to program without having a main method. That's why we are starting, even though several of these are unknown to you. For example, we're going to learn what these square brackets mean when we talk about arrays later on. Alright, so what we do know is that we can print a message to the user on the display that will say, please give us a real number. Let's do that. We're going to use the system class, the out variable of the system class, and the printline method. We are going to put the argument, the message that we want to print, inside the parentheses that will say, please provide a real, for example. Now the user will write down on the keyboard a number, and we should be able to process that number. How are we going to do that? We talked about the scanner class and how it helps us in exactly that task. How do we create a scanner object? We say new scanner, a pair of parentheses, a semicolon. If we want to be scanning from standard input from the keyboard, then the argument we're going to supply to scanner, what we're going to put inside the parentheses, is going to be system.in. System.in means that we're going to scan the stream of bytes coming from the keyboard. Excellent. Now we have this newly created scanner object. Because we want to be able to use it later on, we need to give it a name. We need to store it somewhere so that we refer to that later. Where are we going to store it? Into a variable. We're going to name it s. And always when we declare a new variable, we need to have the type of the variable and then the name of the variable. We have the name of the variable, it is s. We now need the type. It has to be the same as the object that is being stored in that variable. So s, the type of s is scanner as well. Great. Now, if you remember when we were talking about the scanner class, we went to the API of the scanner class. Let's actually go back there again. This is the API of the scanner class, and I have scrolled down the page in order to find the next double method, which is the method that will interpret the next socket of the stream of bytes as a double. This method returns a double. Double is a specific, a reserved word in Java, is one of the types with which we represent real numbers. We will talk about doubles in topic 2. So if we go back, we will like to use this next double method so that we get the double, the real number that the user gave to us. We cannot just say next double. The method needs to be called through the scanner variable. And also, because the method returns a value that is of double type, we need to store that value that the method will return into a variable. Let's call it d. And that variable that we are just declaring here needs to have exactly the same type as the value that is being stored there. So it has to be of type double as well. Excellent. One more thing that we need to do, and I will go back to the API, but this time I will go to the very top. You will see that the scanner class is, as we have already said, part of the Java libraries. We don't need to write it, we don't need to define it, we can just go ahead and use it. It has already been written for us, but we need to tell the compiler, well, where to find its definition. And how do we do that? The scanner class is inside the java.util package. So we need to go and have an import statement that will say import the java.util.scanner class. And what will this do? It will tell the compiler that the symbol that you see here, this scanner word, is not something unknown to you. Go to this particular file and find the definition of scanner. So by this time, we should have achieved reading the input from the user, and so that we get some more confidence and make sure that what we have written down so far is correct, let's print what the value that we just stored in the variable. I'm going to save the file and get the terminal and compile and run this portion of the program we have written. Make sure that when you have the terminal, the working directory in your terminal is the same as the directory in which you have stored your Java file. And after we have done that, we're going to just compile it. How do we compile it? We use the javac command and then wheel.java. And every time you type something, you can also make use of the tab. Let me show you again what I mean. So we had no compile errors. Java now is the command that we use in order to run it. See, I only type W here and then I press tab, and that fills the rest of the word for me. It fills it with anything that is named wheel inside that subdirectory. Here I don't want any wheel dot file. I only want, in the Java command we only put the name of the class, not anything else. And he says, please provide a real, now that our program is running. Let me write this random number here, and then it prints it back to us. So our program so far is working as expected. What I have added to our class is a variable called radius that is of type double, which will be the radius of the wheel object, and then a constructor, as we have seen before. If the fact that we have declared this variable inside the wheel class and the constructor sound strange to you, I would invite you to go back to the robot example and go slower over how we declare, for example, the constructor and everything. So the constructor, like usual, will have the same name as the class. And what do we do inside the constructor? We say that whatever value you provide upon the creation of the wheel object, I will take that value, which is here, and I will assign it to the radius variable of the wheel. So when we create a wheel object, what do? We do new wheel, and then inside the parentheses we provide whatever type of argument the wheel expects, the constructor expects. So here we should provide a double number. That's what we're going to do. We're going to provide d, which is what the user gave us, which is a real number. So now we have created a new wheel object that has a radius value, the value that the user gave us, and we're going to store that wheel object into a variable. I will call it w. That needs to be of the same type as the wheel object. So now we have our nice variable, and I will save it, I will compile to make sure. Compiling is often critical when writing applications to make sure that no silly mistakes have been made. Remember that with the top arrow we can go and find the history of the commands we have inserted in the terminal, we have typed in the terminal, and we don't have to retype and spend time in retyping. So the compiler tells us that there are no mistakes and we are ready for the next steps.